Is that a go? Hi, I'm Theresa Gagnon, your yoga guide here at Yoga Source, and this is our amazing...
Your amazing Brandon Green from Strata Internal Performance, and I'm a muscle system specialist.
Thank goodness we've collaborated, come together, because we all know how popular yoga is, and I know how much people are truly getting injured, not just necessarily from any of the exercise or practice, but the not really being aware and understanding their physicalities and their bodies. And without the proper guides, then trouble can happen. You can have injuries. Today's discussion is around the shoulder. Big injuries around the shoulder. Do you see a lot of injuries in the shoulder coming to you?
Oh, absolutely. So as a muscle specialist, I work with a lot of people who have injuries, and I have to say 50% of them are shoulder or shoulder complex related. It's a big, complicated area.
Because we're always expressing and moving and grooving and doing our jobs with our arms. And then when we apply it to lifting weights or doing yoga and holding our body weight, well, first thing you got to understand is like, what is the range of motion of that arm? And you're going to talk about that.
So before we even start talking about how the shoulder complex relates to any yoga poses, we need to really understand is what are we dealing with when we talk about the shoulder? Because most people, when they say, my shoulder hurts, they're talking about right here. They say, oh, my shoulder hurts. Now here's the problem. There is actually absolutely no thing as a shoulder joint. There's a shoulder complex. And the shoulder complex is made up of 5 separate small joints and a few different bones. So we have the clavicle or the collarbone, we got the arm bone or the humerus, and we have the scapula. And so we have joints, we have the sternoclavicular joint, the acromioclavicular joint, the glenohumeral joint, the scapulothoracic joint, and then technically by a book called Kapanji, there is a 5th joint, which is actually not a joint, it's called the acromiocoracoid joint, whereas a ligament, it kind of crosses and acts like a little buffer.
He knows his stuff, doesn't he? And you don't have to know all this stuff, just listen carefully, but you do want to understand the blanket of this possibility. And by the way, we got to introduce Mr. Boner. We're really accosting him, so this is Mr. Boner, by the way. Okay.
Hi guys! By the way, you do need to know all this or I'm going to test you.
You do, no.
So at the end of the day, I'm throwing all those words out there. It's not about you knowing those words. What it's really about knowing is that there are a lot of joints involved here. And something as simple as you reaching to the top shelf to get a glass in the kitchen involves a lot of joints. And we are, to be fair, only talking about the shoulder complex. We're not talking about right now the relationship of it to the neck or to the rib cage, which is also really vital.
Another day.
So there is one component of it we're going to talk about, and in the shoulder complex, it's called the scapulo-humeral rhythm, which we're going to talk about as we jump into some examples.
Okay, well, the biggest example for the yoga practice is I always say extension, but it's flexion. When you raise your arm up like hello, that is really important in our yoga practice, extending your arm. And I see a lot of this. And I say widen the girth and just open up your arms. Even turn your palms inward towards each other so the upper arm externally rotates, and that helps quite a bit. So don't have to do this, don't have to do that. It's just hello. Say yes to freedom.
Oh yeah, and so it's a big area because when you guys see Theresa do her shoulder flexion, shoulder complex flexion, I mean, much like myself, we've got full 180-degree motion. Some people do not have that motion. They've actually got less or they've got more.
Yes, yes.
So there's 2 things here. One is that most people, if they're going to experience a shoulder injury, and you've probably seen this tons of times in your class, it's what they would blanketly call as a rotator cuff injury. And now, that's not fair to say, but that's usually right in this front area here. And there's a bursa, there's a bicep tendon, there's a muscle, rotator cuff, supraspinatus, there's a bunch of stuff. Ultimately, it all feels gobbledygook, doesn't feel very good. So how are you going to get one of those? Well, what have we talked about in previous videos? Structure is going to dictate function. And so if you've got a bone, like this bone and this bone, when I lift my arm up and I get all the way up to here and I can't go any further, what ends up happening here is it's not that my muscles can't pull me any further, it's that I have bones going and locking, and you lose the ability to go further. So if you have your car door, Theresa, if you take your wonderful car outside and you open that car door as far as it can go and you go, you know what, I really want that car door to open more, and you try to push it further open, what's going to happen to that car door over time?
How did you know that just happened in my car? I did. I literally broke my car door.
So this is why you don't buy cars with Theresa.
I did. And it broke. It broke. And it dented the whole fender and everything. It was terrible. Anyways. That's what happens, and that's what happens physically to you when you push yourself in any exercise program, especially the yoga program. When I say do what you can, listen to yourself, do not push and hurt yourself.
And so this is what happens when you force your joint to do something that it's not intended to do. How many cool cars are there right now that have those suicide doors that don't open outwards, they open upwards? And you go outside and you look at your Corolla and you go, you know what? I love suicide doors. And it opens up and you try to pick that door up and it doesn't go anywhere. But you try it for 6 months and you know what's going to happen? You're not going to be strong enough to break that door off, but it's going to get loose. And it's going to move and it's going to move, and over time that wears away and causes problems.
A good analogy, and it breaks, it just breaks, it breaks.
Now the second part of this whole thing, which is the kind of more anatomy gritty part, is when you pick your arm up, it's not just as simple as moving the shoulder.
No, there's
right?
so much.
We have the clavicle and the scapula that all lifts up along with the arm, and that's what the scapulohumeral rhythm is for every 2 degrees of motion that happens at this glenohumeral joint, there is 1 degree of motion that happens at the scapula. So why is that important? You have to let your scapula move. You can't force it down too much. Have you seen that where people are like almost over forcing their shoulder blades down and then they try to lift their arms up?
Yes, all the time. I see students, the yogis that are like, I got this. They're like Shazam like this, and they're pushing down so far it looks like that, as opposed to, doesn't it look freer? That looks much better. That's so much better.
More relaxed.
As opposed to this trying really hard, or this trying to do it really hard. So there is that fine line of balance.
And this is one of the challenges I find, and I don't know if you found this too, is that there are a lot of online rehab sources telling you that they know how to rehab your shoulder. And they will all tell you, whenever you move, you have to stabilize your scapula. Now, having a stable scapula is crucial. But people interpret that as this hyper contraction and forcing everything back and down. And Theresa, I'll tell you what, you can even do this, turn sideways to the camera and squeeze your shoulder blades back and down as tight as you can. Now don't let them move, don't let your shoulder blades move, and try to reach up to my hand. Don't let the shoulder blade move. Right? What's happening to her? Look at her face, she's making that effort face we've talked about. It looks icky. So what ends up happening is that your shoulder blade, because it's crucial in motion, does not move. And that means that only one joint is moving. And what happens? What was that injury we talked about earlier? What is the most common shoulder injury? This anterior compartment syndrome thing that everyone gets. So what's the simple solution? Don't overthink your shoulder blade. Let it move naturally.
Yeah, because it does. It moves naturally, up and down and all around.
See, the great thing about the human body is if you listen to it, it tells you exactly what to do. The problem is we just think we know more than our body, and we try to do what she can do.
And we push it. We push it to its limit. So the range of motion of your arm, let it be free. And that's why in my practice, since I've worked with you, is just let the freedom of the movement happen and just breathe deeply into the sensations that you're feeling. And don't force it. Don't hold that effort face, and make sure your arm is feeling in response back to your brain saying yes and not saying no, because you're gonna hurt it, just like forcing that car door. Yes. So there's a lot to this arm. So let's just tap into the side plank and just holding that for a moment. So say if I take my arm out to the side, and that's fine, but what if I put weight on it? That's another thing too. Let's do it. Let's just hear it.
Let's have a look.
I'm just gonna go down here for a second. So let me go. Hello, Mr. Boner. So if my hand is down on the floor, and I'm gonna take my legs out and support them in a way that's more supportive, so I can. Oh, there you go. So this is huge. This is huge right here. A lot of people are like, oh my gosh.
See, that looks really stable and in good control. But Theresa, what do you see people do? What is the bad habit that people do from here?
Well, for most is the arm is further out and they're scared, and their first thing is that they know they're not able to do this and they're doing it anyhow.
So this is a complicated motion, as you guys can all see. And so we've kind of talked about this in the plank video of how we can make this a little bit easier.
Yes.
First and foremost, what do muscles do? They contract. They help to move us, they help to protect our joints, and they help to absorb force. So if you're not strong enough, and I shouldn't say strong enough, because then you might hear that and go, but I am strong. Yeah. But if you have a real struggle holding a position for even a few seconds, you're gonna hold it for 60 seconds. How can we make that easier? And one thing that's really easy is, from Theresa's position she was at there, just bend the arm. You can go down on the elbow and do a smaller side plank.
Thank you, because I didn't plan this, but that's the other thing, is that when you're not able to go full on in the arm straight up, then the other variation is you can take your forearm across the midline. That's awesome. For me, I don't like it, but it's awesome, meaning this is harder for me, and that forearm is your support, because there's more of a base supporting the weight of your body.
Now we would reverse engineer this. Teresa, go back to that position if you don't mind.
Okay, and also you can put your forearm, hello Mr. Boner, you can press your forearm in this direction as well, and I know I'm just kitty cornering in this, and or across the midline.
Now Teresa, go back up for a second. Say you don't like this position, what you could always do too, how about you bend your bottom leg and go on your knee on the side down there?
Oh yes, yes,
on the
yes,
bottom
yes,
edge.
yes.
See, so we've just changed it now so your shoulder's even taking less force. And
This first, straight arm, and then, or you could be on your forearm, and that works too.
See, it's perfect. It really comes down at the end of the day to control. Isn't it all about control? Sorry, Dr.
It is
B.
about control, and it's about noodling. Where do I need to make sure that I am in a great space of energy, listening to myself and listening to the fact that this is yes and this is no. And if there's a no, then have a conversation with your instructor, your guide, and a muscle specialist such as Brandon, and see where you can augment your practice. Because I know I say it over and over. Come on your forms, go off your, it's nonstop. But what are you hearing?
And what is a no? How does your body interpret the no? Right? And it's funny because pain, I don't feel pain, I'm tough, or I'm strong, I'm tough. We say those things to each other, but it's not about that. The no's in our body, the clear message is, do you like how that feels? Because if you don't like how it feels, if you're experiencing a sensation that doesn't feel good to you, why are you doing it? It's not going to be healthy. If you don't like how it feels, there's going to be a way that you could modify it where you will like how it feels. And I guarantee you, if you like how it feels, it will be safer.
It will be successful. And again, going back to, if it doesn't feel good, then listen to your body, because it's your best friend and it doesn't like, has no ego. It's telling you, don't do it. It's your ego, your mind, and we talk about this in yoga, that's telling you, do it because everybody else is doing it and you want to look like that other yogi next to you. That's the unconscious self-thinking, and that's not what we practice in yoga. So listen, muscle specialist telling you the range of motion, there's reasons for this, and yes, you are absolutely beautiful as is. So stay tuned for more discussions if you want to learn more about all of this wonderful stuff and grow your yoga practice or any exercise practice with success. Then talk to the specialist. I am Theresa Yoga. Theresa Gagnon, your yoga guide at Yoga Source here in studio space, and
I'm Brandon Green, your biomechanics fitness resource from Strata Internal Performance.
so much more to talk about. Stay tuned for the next episodes. Namaste.